Have you ever been told you're not good enough? That your vision doesn't fit? That it's time to go? In 1985, a 30-year-old man walked out of the company he built from nothing. Publicly humiliated, stripped of power, and cast aside like yesterday's news. The tech world whispered. The media circulated. His own board, the people he'd assembled, had chosen someone else over him. Most people would have crumbled. Some would have disappeared. A few might have plotted revenge. Steve Jobs did something different. He went into the wilderness, got lost, found himself, and returned 12 years later to pull off the most stunning corporate resurrection in American history. This isn't just a business story. It's a parable about rejection, reinvention, and the raw power of simplicity. And if you've ever felt sidelined, overlooked, or written off, this story is your roadmap back. Act 1. The boy who built a revolution in a garage. Let's rewind to 1976. Two Steves, Jobs and Wozniak, working out of a suburban garage in Los Altos, California. Wozniak was the technical wizard, the guy who could make circuits sing. Jobs was the dreamer, the guy who asked the question nobody else was asking. What if computers weren't just for engineers and corporations? What if they were for everyone? That question birthed the Apple I, then the Apple II, a machine that didn't just compute, it invited. Teachers used it, kids programmed on it, small businesses ran on it. By 1980, Apple went public, and Steve Jobs, not yet 25, became a multi-millionaire. The garage startup had become a cultural phenomenon. But success has a shadow. As Apple grew, so did the egos, the bureaucracy, the competing visions. Jobs was a perfectionist, often abrasive, always uncompromising. He demanded excellence and didn't apologize for it. He believed in beauty, in elegance, in products that didn't just work, they delighted. In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh. It was revolutionary, a computer with a graphical interface, a mouse, fonts that looked like real typography. It smiled at you when you turned it on. It said, "Hello." It was personal computing made personal. But the Mac was expensive, and sales stumbled. Tensions inside Apple boiled over. Jobs clashed with John Scully, the CEO he'd recruited from Pepsi, with the famous line, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" Scully had come, but now the board faced a choice: the visionary founder or the experienced executive. They chose Scully. In May 1985, Steve Jobs was stripped of his duties. By September, he resigned. He was 30 years old, fired from the company he'd started in his parents' garage. The headlines were brutal. The humiliation public. The fall complete. Have you ever felt that kind of rejection? That soul-crushing moment when the thing you built turns its back on you? Most stories end there. Steve Jobs' story was just beginning. Act 2. The wilderness years, where failure becomes fuel. When you lose everything, you have two choices: bitterness or building. Jobs chose the latter. He didn't retreat, he reinvented. First, he founded NeXT Computer. If Apple wouldn't let him build the future, he'd build it himself. NeXT was ambitious: sleek black hardware, cutting-edge software, designed for universities and researchers. The NeXT Cube was a work of art: perfect edges, magnesium casing, an interface years ahead of its time. Tim Berners-Lee would later use a NeXT computer to create the World Wide Web. But NeXT was also expensive, too niche. Sales were disappointing. The hardware division eventually shut down. By conventional metrics, NeXT was a failure. But here's the thing about failure. It's only final if you stop learning. Steve Jobs didn't stop. At NeXT, he refined his philosophy. He learned to focus. He learned to say no. He learned that great products aren't built by committee. They're built by small teams with singular vision. He learned that software, not hardware, was the future. And crucially, he built NeXT, an operating system so advanced that it would one day become the foundation of something much bigger. Then came Pixar. In 1986, Jobs bought a small computer graphics division from George Lucas for $10 million. It was a side bet, a curiosity. The team was talented, but struggling. They made short films to showcase their rendering software. Jobs kept funding them, kept believing. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the first fully computer-animated feature film. It wasn't just a technical marvel. It was a story with heart, humor, and humanity. It made audiences cry over a cowboy doll and a space ranger. It grossed $373 million worldwide. Pixar's IPO made Jobs a billionaire. But more than money, Pixar taught Jobs something profound. Simplicity is storytelling. Pixar's films succeeded because they stripped away everything that didn't serve the emotional core. No unnecessary subplots, no wasted scenes, every frame in service of the story. Jobs absorbed that lesson. He would carry it back to Apple. Act 3. The Return. A surgeon with a scalpel. In 1996, Apple was dying. The company had lost its way. Too many products, too little focus, no clear identity. Market share was plummeting. The brand that once meant innovation now meant confusion. Apple needed help. In a twist of fate, Apple bought NeXT for $429 million, primarily for its operating system. Jobs came with the deal, first as an advisor, then as interim CEO. By 1997, he was back in charge. Imagine that moment, returning to the company that fired you, now on its knees, begging for rescue. What would you do? Jobs didn't gloat. He didn't settle scores. He got to work. His first move was ruthless simplicity. Apple had dozens of products. Jobs grabbed a marker and drew a 2x2 grid on a whiteboard. Consumer, professional. Desktop, question mark, question mark. Portable, question mark, question mark. 4 quadrants, 4 products. Everything else, canceled. It was brutal. Projects were killed. People were let go. But the fog lifted. Apple could focus. In 1998, Apple launched the iMac, a translucent, candy-colored, all-in-one computer that looked like it came from the future. It had no floppy drive, critics howled. It was playful, approachable, and unapologetically simple. The tagline? Think different. The iMac was a hit. It saved Apple from bankruptcy and announced to the world, "We're back." But Jobs was just warming up. Act 4. The Symphony of Simplicity. iPod, iPhone, iPad. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod. The promise was elegantly simple: 1,000 songs in your pocket. No instruction manual needed. Just a click wheel, a white earbud, and suddenly your entire music library traveled with you. The iPod didn't just play music, it became a cultural icon. Then came the iTunes Store in 2003. The music industry was in chaos, piracy rampant. Apple offered a simple solution: legal, easy, 99 cents per song. One click, one download, one library. It worked because it was simple. In 2007, Jobs walked on stage and said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." He introduced the iPhone, a device with no physical keyboard, just a sheet of glass. One button. Touch, swipe, tap.
It combined a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator into one elegant object. The interface was so intuitive, toddlers could use it. Critics said it would fail. It became the most successful product in history. Then the iPad in 2010. Then the App Store, turning the iPhone into a platform, not just a product. Each launch followed the same principle. Reduce to the essential, design for humans, let the technology disappear. Simplicity wasn't a design choice, it was a strategy. It was the strategy. The leadership lesson. Focus is a superpower. Let's pause and ask, what made Steve Jobs' comeback possible? Not just talent, not just timing. It was focus, the discipline to say no to good ideas so great ones could breathe. When Jobs returned to Apple, he didn't try to do everything. He did 4 things well. He didn't chase every market. He defined his market and owned it. He didn't add features. He subtracted until only the essential remained. Here's what that looks like in practice. 1. Simplicity is subtraction. Cut the good to make room for the great. Jobs killed 70% of Apple's product line. What can you cut? 2. Simplicity is clarity. If you can't explain it in one sentence, it's too complicated. 1,000 songs in your pocket. What's your one sentence? 3. Simplicity is alignment. Every team, every touch point, every pixel tells the same story. Is your team aligned or scattered? 4. Simplicity is courage. Saying no is harder than saying yes. Jobs said no constantly. What are you saying yes to that you shouldn't? 5. Simplicity is empathy. Designed for the user's job, not your ego. What does your customer actually need? Jobs once said, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. But it's worth it in the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains. That's the superpower. Simplicity moves mountains. The personal transformation. Failure as a forge. Here's the part of the story that often gets missed. Steve Jobs didn't just return with better products. He returned as a better leader. Being fired humbled him. NeXT taught him patience. Pixar taught him storytelling. He learned to listen more, to trust his team, to let go of the need to control every detail. Well, mostly. He still demanded excellence, but he did it with more wisdom, more perspective. In his famous 2005 Stanford commencement speech, Jobs said, "Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, free to enter one of the most creative periods of my life." Read that again. The worst moment of his life became the catalyst for his greatest work. Rejection became reinvention. Failure became fuel. What if your setback is your setup? What if the thing that broke you is actually breaking you open? The legacy. A company reborn. A blueprint for you. By the time Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, Apple was the most valuable company in the world. The boy fired from his own garage startup had returned to build an empire, not through complexity, but through relentless and uncompromising simplicity. Today, when you swipe your phone, stream a song, or open a laptop that just works, you're living inside Steve Jobs' philosophy. A philosophy that says technology should serve humanity, not confuse it. Design should be invisible. The best products are the ones you don't have to think about. But this story isn't just about Apple. It's about you. Your comeback company. The call to action. Maybe you've been fired. Maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe your idea was rejected, your proposal ignored, your vision dismissed. Maybe you're drowning in complexity. Too many projects, too many priorities, too much noise. Here's your playbook, inspired by Steve Jobs. Step 1. Draw your 2x2. What are the 4 things that actually matter? Write them down. Everything else? Cut it. Step 2. Write your 1 sentence. What's your 1,000 songs in your pocket? What's the one problem you solve, for whom, and why does it matter? If you can't say it in 1 sentence, simplify. Step 3. Say no to good ideas. This week, identify 1 project, 1 meeting, 1 commitment that's good but not great. Cut it. Protect your focus. Step 4. Ship something simple. Within 7 days, launch 1 thing that embodies simplicity. A product, a message, a process. Not perfect, essential. Step 5. Share your comeback story. Post your 2x2. Share your 1 sentence. Tag someone who needs to hear this. Use the hashtag #ComebackCompany. Let's build a movement of focus, clarity, and simplicity. Simplicity is a superpower, but only if you use it. The final word. Hello again. In 1997, when Steve Jobs returned to Apple, the company launched an ad campaign with 2 words: think different. But the real message was simpler. Hello again. A return to essence, a return to purpose, a return to what made Apple, Apple. Your comeback starts the same way, not by doing more, by doing less, better. Not by adding, by subtracting. Not by complicating, by clarifying. Steve Jobs was fired, reinvented, and returned and then transformed Apple. You can do the same with your company, your career, your life. The question is, will you?